Hi, guys. Welcome to Smarter News. I'm Jenna, and this is today's quick hit on the hearing for President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. This hearing took place before the Senate Armed Services Committee, and it lasted a little bit more than 4 hours. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes of highlights about what to know and why it really matters. But before we get to that, let's do something a little bit different. Let's talk about why the Secretary of Defense matters and how it actually came to be. There's actually a very interesting backstory to this. So when President George Washington was establishing the very first cabinet, there were 4 positions: Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Secretary of War. So it was one of the original cabinet positions in American history. And it remained the Secretary of War, that title, until 1947, when in the aftermath of World War II, there were a whole bunch of changes. President Truman established what looks more like our modern Pentagon, the modern Department of Defense. In fact, this is the same year that the CIA is established, among other things. So President Truman pulls together all the different branches of the military and puts it underneath this umbrella, which now we know as the Department of Defense. And there's a new title. There's no longer a Secretary of War. There's a transition to the Secretary of Defense. And think about that for a second, about how those different titles sound and feel to you. The Secretary of War has a different posture than the Secretary of Defense. Again, this was occurring right after this particularly deadly and long battle of World War II. So now the Defense Department is huge. It is the biggest portion of discretionary spending of our taxpayer dollars. It's also one of the nation's largest employers with nearly 3 million people, again, under its umbrella. So it's very, very big. And here's how the Department of Defense sums up their mission. This is on the website. Our mission is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. With that in mind, let's talk a little bit about today's hearing. Pete Hegseth faced a variety of questions during this committee hearing. Republicans really focused on Hegseth's service as well as his faith. And because we are going to see a Republican administration in the White House, the Republicans have the majority, Republicans were mostly supportive. Democrats were the opposite. They were mostly critical. Democrats focused on questions about Hegseth's character. And this is where you might have seen these allegations already reported in the press. There were allegations of drinking, of inappropriate professional behavior, of sexual assault, of sexual harassment. That was brought up in this hearing. There was also a lot of questions that Democrats focused on his experiencing managing a team and managing a big budget as part of his career after serving in the military, running some veteran military organizations. And there was also a great deal of focus on some of his past comments about the role of women in the military. Again, that's really what Democrats were focusing on. And again, they were mostly critical along party lines here. Politics is everywhere. Posturing was everywhere, as is very typical in these hearings. But here's 3 things that really stood out, or 3 takeaways, if we're going to reduce these 4 hours to just a short period of time, and the things that you should know. So the first thing that really stands out to me here is the focus on culture and Christianity. I've listened to a lot of different hearings over the years. This is one of the ones that I would say stands out in how much Christianity was discussed and supported, and is not only part of Hegseth's philosophy and his way of life, but something that was openly discussed amongst lawmakers as well. And a focus really on the culture within the military. And as Hegseth says, trying to improve the culture from what he sees is a needed position. Hegseth was referred to as a non-traditional nominee who has made professional and personal mistakes. And that's something that Hegseth actually addressed in his opening statement. So I have a short soundbite here for you. We have a portion of it where he talks a little bit about his experience and his philosophy, and then another portion of the soundbite where he's answering a question and addressing in a non-specific way some of the critiques against him.
My only special interest is the warfighter, deterring wars, and if called upon, winning wars by ensuring our warriors never enter a fair fight. We let them win, and we bring them home. Like many of my generation, I've been there. I've led troops in combat. I've been on patrol for days. I've pulled a trigger down range, heard bullets whiz by, flex-cuffed insurgents, called in close air support, led medevacs, dodged IEDs, pulled out dead bodies, and knelt before a battlefield cross. This is not academic for me. This is my life. I led then, and I will lead now. I have prided myself as a leader of respecting people, being professional. That is the balance of mine. I'm not a perfect person, as has been acknowledged. Saved by the grace of God, by Jesus and Jenny. I'm not a perfect person, but redemption is real. And God forged me in ways that I know I'm prepared for.
Let's turn to takeaway number 2. And this is where Democrats really focused on character and very much methodically discussed these allegations about Hegseth's personal and professional life. Here's a particularly tough exchange between Hegseth and the Senator of Virginia, Tim Kaine.
But you
Fully
acknowledge
investigated.
that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, I'm not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
But shortly after that, here's the defense that came from Senator Mullen of Oklahoma.
The senator from Virginia starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because a man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes.
And that leads to really our final takeaway. We got a lot of content about character and Christianity and culture. But one of the things that we did not focus on or hear a lot about in this hearing is a lot of detail about strategy. So here's a few questions that could have been asked by both Republicans and Democrats that were not. And I just sort of jotted these down as I was listening to this hearing based on some of the news headlines that we've seen over the past several months and years. Here's one. What is the right military posture to deter war? What's the biggest threat facing America today? How do we confront this? You have experience in traditional land wars. What's the next frontier of war? What are your top priorities for the Space Force? The FBI director, the outgoing FBI director, just gave an interview. And one of the things he said is that Chinese hackers have infiltrated a lot of the key infrastructure in America. What are you going to do about this? These are some questions strategic questions that were not asked. And if there's one takeaway from this hearing is the lack of really strategic questions about the major threats that America faces. So here's what's going to happen next. This Senate committee is going to vote to recommend or not Pete Hegseth to the broader Senate. And if the votes are along party lines, that's what's going to happen. Then the entire Senate will consider Pete Hegseth as the nominee for the Secretary of Defense. And again, if the votes happen along party lines, it is likely that he will be confirmed. Over the course of the last 4 hours that I watched, it doesn't look like there's going to be a particular topic or response that would disrupt this pathway, but anything can happen. And for example, if President-elect Trump didn't like what he saw or he wanted to make a change, that could also happen. It would be a more non-traditional path or a non-traditional outcome, but until someone is officially confirmed, anything can take place. So I'm curious, Smart News is all about curiosity over commentary. What matters most to you about this position? What do you think should be the focus in a hearing like this? Is it character? Is it content? Is it culture? Is it Christianity? Is it religion? Like, what is it? What do you think we really need to focus on for this particular position? I'm very curious to see your comments, or you can always email us, hello@smartnews.com. We love hearing from you. And I'm always fascinated by your insight about what really matters to the American people and beyond. So that's your quick hit. I'm Jenna. Thank you so much for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan news. Thank you for believing in quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. Every time you join us or share or save our content, you help us build a solution in news, and we are so grateful. We have a few other ways you can support our mission, from joining our insider community scoop, to shopping our gear at our Smarter shop, to just telling a friend. The best way to do any of this is to visit smarternews.com or follow us at Smarter News on social media. Don't worry, we put all of this in the captions so it's easy for you. Plus, we added our email just in case you want to drop us a note. We always love hearing from you. Thank you for helping us deliver news smarter.